Hey guys, how you going? How you going? How are you doing? Oh, I'm tired. Sorry. I just got doing a video for tomorrow on KJ yet again. I'm telling you, this girl, man, is driving me insane. She does like three different videos a day of the same subject. Anyways, hey Autistic, KSD. I just got to skip what I was reading before because it was it was hard, and I don't want to read that again. Okay. Hey, cool gamer. I'm just gonna start reading. I'm not sure if Sayla's gonna join me tonight or not. I don't know. Hopefully. If not, that's okay. Poor girl lost her cat. So last Monday she wasn't able to attend because I felt so bad. She was her cat just passed away in her arms. Can you imagine? Broke my heart for her. I'm very attached to my animals, which I'm sure all you guys are as well. And it's really, really hard to lose your pet. They become family. They're like your daughters, your sons. And then EKC lost hers as well. She had to have hers put down. I felt so bad. Oh, sorry, one second. Speaking of dogs, I let mine out. I gotta go grab them. Yeah, I'm coming. Okay, I'm back. I can barely hear him over on Walsh. Ow! Hey, Ricky. Okay, I'm just gonna get started with this. So we left off on still the same chapter 11. It's called Law Enforcement. This one's fairly big, fairly long. I mean, all right. Why was I doing all of this? Because I knew that Adam's murder was not an isolated case, that it was not a rarity, and that it hadn't happened in a vacuum. People knew about Adam's murder because of all the publicity that had surrounded it. But Adam wasn't the first kid abducted and murdered by a Pete. All anyone had to see were a few samples from some of the confiscated films and videos that Wrestler and I included in our presentations. A 50-year holy, I'm trying to get. I don't want to read this. It's too much. Anyways, so we can get the gist of it. There was horrible things that they were showing, and they're in their presentations. To know what these unspeakable crimes were a lot more common than people like to think they were. It wasn't easy for me to make those slideshow presentations with Wrestler, but I did it anyway. And the cops we talked to seemed to understand and appreciate that. They would come up to me afterward and say, "Thank you, Mr. Walsh. God bless you." Before long, I knew as much about these things as any cop in the country. At the same time, I was receiving tens, if not hundreds, of calls a week from all over the country, from people who had an agenda, didn't have an agenda, had heard about Adam's case, had a missing child, had a nonprofit organization, wanted to help the Adam Walsh Center, wanted me to speak, wanted to meet with me, wanted to thank me. A lot of calls also came from state legislators to tell me about spin-off programs and legislation happening in their state, proposals for tougher penalties for child abduction, missing children, clearing houses, bills dealing with every aspect of child exploitation. I was also traveling more and more to Washington. In March of 1983, I met with President Reagan, who reaffirmed his commitment to the center. Then that fall, not long after the movie Adam had aired, someone from Al Regenery's office at the Justice Department called up and said, "Give us a wish list of what you want your National Center for Missing Children to be." Jay Howell did just that, covering all the issues in a proposal that we thought were important. The next week, OJJDP called back and said, "You've got the center. It's yours." By that point, it was pretty obvious to me that my life was never going to be what I had been before we lost Adam. Things had gone in an entirely different direction, and there wasn't going to be any turning back. With all that was going on, it was crazy to think that I could continue to maintain my end of the Paradise Grand partnership. On top of that, one of the requirements for getting funding for the National Center to be located in Washington, D.C., was that I had to be part of the deal. We want you either to run it or be involved as a consultant, they said, but we want you directly involved. The work would pay a small per diem, far less than what I had earned in the hotel partnership, but it would be enough to keep the family afloat. So we decided. It was a sad parting. I sold out my interest in Paradise Grand to the other partners, and in the spring of 1984, Reve and Megan and I moved to Washington. Jay had left the Senate staff and was working as a Justice Department consultant for the center. I was going to be the vice chairman of the 5-person board of directors, a consultant, which technically meant that I didn't have a job. When they heard the news, the local press was gracious about supporting the hometown boy. Nation's youth will benefit with Walsh in Washington, one headline read. In his new national post, he's the man who can make a difference for the nation's most vulnerable citizens. We found a townhouse in a development in a Virginia suburb called Oakton, and I became a consultant to the new National Center. It was pretty clear that Robbie Calloway and his friends on the Hill were interested in getting me to think about running for office, but I wasn't interested. If I had done that, I wouldn't have been able to get anything done. As a private citizen, at least I could take aim and criticize elected officials when I thought I should. I knew that I could get a lot more things accomplished as an outsider. We were getting a lot of state bills passed, but I was having to do a lot of the traveling to different states, cutting the deals one by one. Bills for the state clearinghouses, background checks for people who worked in daycare centers, upgrades for local law enforcement. All related to the children's issues, anything and everything that we could think of. It meant that I was away from home a lot of the time, and it was hard on Reve. But then we got some good news. She was pregnant again. On June 13, 1984, Reve and Megan and I returned to the White House, this time for the opening of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, a private organization funded temporarily by a $3.3 million grant from the Justice Department. It was the third time in a month that we had appeared with the president, and this time was the most emotional of all. Reagan held the ceremony in the East Room of the White House, quite an honor considering that room is usually reserved only for state dinners and top-level diplomatic receptions. The president and George Bush were there, as a group of parents of missing children, all wearing buttons with their children's pictures on them. During his remarks, the president mentioned the names of 4 children who had disappeared: 12-year-old Ann Gottlieb of Louisville, John Gosch, 13, of Des Moines, Kevin Collins, 10, of San Francisco, and Adam Walsh. Reagan gave a nice speech, and just as he got to a line about how our work was a voice calling out to protect our children and keep them safe, a baby in the audience suddenly let out a cry. Then Reagan introduced me and invited me up to the podium. We presented him with signatures of support for the center from over 250,000 school children, and I talked about losing Adam. I beseech you not to assume it couldn't happen to you, I said, looking out at the audience. It has happened to thousands of children and parents. We are all responsible for all the children. This time when Reve's due date rolled around that December, I had the whole Lamaze drill down, lots of ice chips. You take deep breaths, I'll take your pulse while you scream and thrash. And then out popped a new little baby, this time a boy. After Adam died, I'd saved a lot of his things, the little things that seemed to be his alone. Beautiful wooden model boats that I had given him, his shell collection, stones and sea beans that we had collected together. I never really knew what I was going to do with all those things until now. We named him Callahan, my mother's maiden name. In the hospital, after they cleaned him up and put a little hat on him and pronounced him perfect, I held him and rocked him the same way I had with Megan. Everything was going along just fine, and then without warning, everything suddenly got strange. I remember a doctor coming up to us in the hallway. Mr. Walsh, I'd like to speak to you about Callahan. I'm afraid that we're not going to be able to put him in the regular nursery because it appears that he has a few problems. It was like a body blow to the stomach. Reve was standing right next to me, and I zeroed right in on that doctor. I do not want to hear any of your medical bullshit. You don't know who you're talking to. Don't give me any jargon. I don't want you to couch it. We had a little boy, and he was murdered, and I want to know right now. You tell me right now what is going to happen to my son. Tell me what the odds are. I want to know what his chances are. 50-50, 75-25. I have to know exactly what to be prepared for, no matter how bad the situation is. The one thing that I will not let you do is torture us by not being straight with us. Holy, I get it, but shit. I hate it when people screw around like that, trying to soften the blow, but not telling you things. I need to know whether Cal was going to make it. I could deal with that. But I was not about to sit around and wait 24 hours to finally hear that something was wrong, really wrong with our new little boy. Okay, Mr. Walsh, this is the situation. Callahan had fluid on his lungs. It could be bad and it could get worse. He also has jaundice. We're going to monitor him for 24 hours. We're putting him on medication and we don't want you to worry yet. As if I could help it, immediately the thoughts started running through my head. I remember thinking to myself, well, wouldn't this be the ultimate test of a job? Waiting 9 months for a new little boy, and now this. If we should somehow lose this little baby, what more could possibly be done to us? I rather resort to prayer. I believe that it is a testament of faith and commitment to religion, but I don't believe in praying just because you need a favor. I've never been one for the old, dear God, if I don't get caught this time, I promise I'll never do it again type of thing. But this time I prayed hard, and I talked to Adam. You've got to look out for your brother this time, I told him. You have to watch over him because he's got to be okay. It was a long, torturous 24 hours. Callahan was in intensive care. We could see him through the ICU window, but we could do nothing to help him. I felt so helpless. I was pacing, watching him, thinking to myself, this would just be too unfair. Reve was doing a lot better than I was. She seemed to believe that the doctors truly could make him well. She somehow had faith that he was going to be okay. Or maybe what she really thought was that no matter what, it just could not happen twice. I stayed right there in the hospital until the doctors got the fluid out of Cal's lungs and his fever broke and his color turned rosy. They came out and told us that he was going to be fine, and he was. Later on, after we got him home, he developed colic, and for the longest time, all he did was cry. We didn't care. He was a feisty little guy, sweet, like Adam. Rebecca said that living in Washington was the closest thing to being in prison that she had ever known. I was on the road for weeks at a time. She was home alone with a baby and a 2-year-old, and all her friends were back down in Florida. She said that she had never had so much quiet in her life, so we talked about it, and not long after Callahan was born, we decided to move back home to Florida. It was, after all, the place where we had won our first victories where, in the mid-'80s, a local dairy first put the pictures of missing children onto milk cartons, and where a drug chain did the same thing on its shopping bags. I didn't know about the shopping bags. I knew about the milk cartons, though. By 1983, we had started a statewide clearinghouse run by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the FDLE, that would list the name of any missing child whose parents requested it. Almost as soon as we got the clearinghouse approved, funded, and operational, it had listings for 3,400 missing kids. That's a lot. Like a lot. We went on to a lot of other things too. Mandated background checks of teachers and childcare workers after we learned that 37 teachers in Florida were felons convicted of either child abuse, drug dealing, or murder. Repeat offender bills, laws that allowed the videotaping of testimony by children who were victims of SA so that they wouldn't have to take the witness stand in court. How the hell did that even happen? So now they do the mandated background checks of teachers when they should have done that in the first place before they became a teacher and worked at a school? Are you kidding me? And they were felons. How is that possible? I mean, wow. That makes me feel sick. But those weren't our only battles. As always, there were still other hurdles on Capitol Hill, this time about getting some sort of ongoing funding for the center. Arlene Spector and Paul Simon wanted it to be administered by Al Reginary's Office at Justice. Ike Andrews, a Democratic congressman from North Carolina who hated Al Reginary, wanted it administered instead by the Department of Health and Human Services. The usual stuff. Through it all, I kept learning about strategy and tactics. One of the things that I had picked up was a habit of winging it whenever I had to give testimony at congressional hearings. Most politicians read from a prepared statement whenever they have to give a speech, but I learned to organize everything on 2 pieces of paper, then work from my notes. I tried a few times to submit testimony beforehand, but I just couldn't do it. I also found that if I didn't provide the staff with my remarks in advance, the way most witnesses did, it didn't give them the chance to get a rebuttal together ahead of time. Those were the kinds of things I learned from dealing with politicians. A lot of passionate, dedicated, hardworking people hold public office in this country, but also a lot of politicians are in love with the statuses and the game of the power. I have no respect for those people, the ones who use the perks of office and forget that a lot of the constituents who put them there are poor, don't know how to work the system, and feel that no one cares about them. Ever since my first run in with Pat Schroeder and Harold Washington, I always made a point of addressing the committee members who leave the hearing room when victims are giving their testimony. That enrages the politicians. They think that I'm an egomaniac for daring to question their behavior. I understand that everyone is busy, even elected representatives, but I also understand what it feels like to be the parent of a murdered child, or an R victim, or a woman whose mother has been beaten to death, to have to pay his or her own way to Washington to attend a hearing, to wait for hours while all these politicians do their public posturing, and then to have to sit down at a witness table. Finally, when three people are left in the room and everyone is shuffling papers and looking in the other direction. If a member of Congress has to get up and leave the courtroom, I don't know why, out of common courtesy, they can't at least acknowledge the witness's presence before they leave. I never was a psychotic right winged vigilante. I am not someone who goes off at the drop of a hat, but for someone who puts heart and soul on the line to try to get something worthwhile accomplished, working on Capitol Hill can be the ultimate frustration. At first, I didn't know the game. Now I know it well as anybody. I just refuse to play it. I've worked with people on both sides of the aisle. It never mattered to me whether someone was a Democrat or a Republican. The only thing I ever cared about was where he or she stood on the children's issues. To me, the situation is simple. Say there's a piece of legislation that has been endorsed by a number of people, a well written, professionally drafted bill that is a measure of support. If it's a good piece of legislation, it proceeds through committees and hearings and eventually reaches the floor of the House Senate for a vote. That's the American process, and if it gets voted down on the floor, I can understand and accept that. If it gets defeated, that is a reflection of the will of the people, their elected representatives saying so. What enrages me is the way that so many small minded, pompous, self important little staff people and bureaucrats can muck up the process and prohibit it from ever getting a hearing. Those times when the holy gatekeepers manage to keep their congressmen from really seeing or considering an issue, that's where my frustration level goes right off the scale. And it's why, at the very beginning, I learned a valuable lesson. If you want to get something done, don't waste your time with 400 staffers. Go to the top, talk to the man or woman who makes the decisions. Still, I had no idea that the battle would be so convoluted, that it would have to be won not only at the federal level, but also by state. I began in the early days by spending most of my time in some outer office waiting to see a guy who could just easily have been running a 7-Eleven, but had instead gotten himself elected to a state legislature. And then pretty soon I found myself addressing whole state legislations. That's how I did it. I worked my way up from staffers of state representatives to the state representatives themselves. Then to state senators, chairmen of the state houses, presidents of the state senates, U.S. congressmen, senators, and finally to presidents themselves, right up on through the whole food chain of politicians. I met some truly wonderful ones, both Democratic and Republican. Robbie Calloway always said that when I lined up legislative endorsements, party affiliation wasn't one of the criteria. The only thing that really mattered was whether the person I was lobbying happened to be at home. I don't think that anyone in the history of this country has listened to more bullshit from politicians than I have. I've been patronized by the best of them, but it never stopped me. Long before it was fashionable to wear a ribbon on your label, I was knocking on congressional doors wearing a button with Adam's picture on it. I wish I could say that I remember all those years with crystal clarity, but I don't. They're a blur to me. They're generic. I don't remember the first time I addressed a state legislator. I can't say which politicians I met first. I do know that over the years, I've addressed the legislators in all 50 states. What I remember most about those trips is what press people refer to as the photo opportunity. Day after day, year after year, the famous John Walsh photo op. It would always start the same way. Some politician shaking my hand, posing with a picture of me, saying, "Thanks so much, John. This is great. This picture is going to be in my constituent newsletter back home, and they're going to love it back in the district." At which point I would say, "I'll be glad to stand next to you for this picture." And then I'd whisper, "Do you know one thing about this bill that's before you? Do you know anything about the bill at all?" "That's right. Of course you don't. You don't know one goddamn thing about this bill. And there's your staff over there, and they don't know anything about it either. So I'm asking you, no, I'm telling you, learn about this bill, learn about what it is that I have traveled all this way to talk about. This is an important bill. It's about children. We can get it passed if we work on it together. Today I've helped you out. I've come here and made you look like a hero, but please, please do learn about this bill." You've got two of them together. Then I would turn to the camera and smile and say, "Okay, let's take the picture." The amazing thing is that it usually worked. 9 times out of 10, the politician would look at me and say, "You know, you're right. I will take a good look at this bill, John. The next time we hold hearings on it, I promise you I'll know a lot more about it than I do now." Over time, we learned never to crack open the champagne bottle until a bill was signed, sealed, and delivered. We couldn't celebrate until it was, because there was so many backstabbers in the world of politics. Things could be fine one minute, shot to hell the next. There was always so much changing of the minds. Those were hard years. I was a man possessed, traveling nonstop on business for the National Center, adding paid speaking engagements and a way of keeping up with the bills. After every one of those trips, I would make a pit stop at the center's office, turn my briefcase upside down, and dump out everything inside it with a big pile on the floor. Julie Cartwright, my assistant at the time, remembers hundreds of matchbook covers, napkin scrapes, and random pieces of paper, all scribbled with the names and phone numbers of people who needed information or who would ask for help or who wanted to give it. That was our filing system after those tips. Julie jotting down whatever I could remember, sticking post-it notes on everything to try to keep track of who needed what. I remember speaking about missing children and victims' rights in the Midwest one time. After the speech, just as I was getting ready to leave, a guy came up to talk to me, obviously drunk and blitzed. You know better than anybody, don't you?" he said. "How could they take my boy? They arred him and they tortured him." Well, I've got news for those two teenage punk bastards. I bought a gun and I'm going to that arraignment and I'm going to shoot them right there in that courtroom. I'm going to kill them. And I've got the gun right here under my coat. I honestly don't blame this father whatsoever. The wheels in my head started turning fast. There were still cops in the auditorium, but I wanted to get the gun away without a struggle. I didn't want to see the guy led away in handcuffs, so I was trying to think of what I could possibly say. I decided to ask the guy what his son's name was. He told me, then started saying how much he had loved his boy. Then it came to me. You know, I said, "You really ought to think about this. If your son could come back for even 30 seconds, do you know what he'd say to you? He'd say, 'Dad, don't do it. I'm in a better place now. Don't be bent on this vengeance. Don't do this thing. Don't hurt anybody else. Justice will be done. Don't do this to my mother. Don't do it to yourself.'" I knew that that was the only thing that might save this guy, the idea that his son would not want to see him like this, that it wasn't the right anything to do, and that was all it took. "I'm going to get rid of this gun," he said. "I'm going to give it away to somebody," and then he completely broke down. "Give me the gun," I said. "I'll take it for you." I didn't feel that I had any right to give this guy all that crap about not taking the law into his own hands. How can you stand there and say that to the father of a murdered child? It's precisely what the father of a murdered child does want to do. I knew that much. I had thought about it myself at times, quite seriously, about what I would do if I ever caught Adam's killer. What should happen to him? How he should die? People had actually said to me, "We could have him killed. We'll get him for you." It could all be done in a heartbeat. Hey, Deb. No, don't be sorry you're late. So no worries. But I also remembered everything that I was working for and that it would be destroyed if I ever did anything like that. Friends would say to me, "If you were involved in just one crime to get even for Adam, it would all end." One crime. What would that do to Megan? To Callahan. I thought about what it would be like if Adam came back, even for a minute or two. He had always been such a gentle person. I knew what he would tell me. He would say, "Don't do this, Dad. Don't do it to Mom and to my brother and sister. Don't." That's what it was like during those years. Unrelenting. Meet this guy, take a look at that bill, speak to this legislator, let's drop this bill. Yes, I'll meet with the guy. Sure, I'll pose for the picture. Fine, I can make that speech. Some people thought it was all very impressive. "Why, Mr. Walsh, you're going to address a joint session of the legislature of the great state of South Carolina," or wherever. That was when all the members of the state house and senate would sit together in the state house on a given night, and someone would tell me that it was a terribly big deal because the only other time it had happened was for the governor's state of the state message or something equally grand. I didn't care. I'd go to bill signings if they asked me to. I've been to more bill signings and had my picture taken more times with more politicians and gotten more commemorative pens than anyone else I know. At home, I have 15 big cardboard boxes filled with memorabilia. I always tell Rebay that one of these days I'm going to go through it all and put everything on display: hats, plaques, commendations, medals, and awards. Somewhere in there is the one proclamation that means more to me than all the rest of the stuff put together. I got it in 1985 when the National Father's Day Committee named me Father of the Year. I knew that we had to work on more than just a political front. The courts were equally important. I wanted to educate myself about the criminal justice system, and the logical way to do it, it seemed to be to start attending trials, especially the trials of men who had been charged with abducting and murdering children. I never made a big deal out of it. Most of the time, I just listened, sitting in the back of the courtroom, not saying a word. Sometimes I did more than that. One experience that will always stand out in my mind is the case of Stacy Jazvac. I'm not sure if I heard of this one. On January 3rd, 1986, Stacy Jazvac, an 11-year-old who lived in Fort Lauderdale, rode her bike to the drugstore to pick up some school supplies. When she still wasn't home an hour later, people started looking for her, and someone found her bike in a vacant field. Almost immediately, more than 1,000 people began a full-scale search. The Adam Walsh Child Resource Center got a phone call right away and began helping to coordinate the search, printing and distributing 50,000 flyers. Nancy McBride, who was then the program coordinator at the Lauderdale Center, gave a lot of support to Stacy's mother, Nancy Jazvac. It was the first major case in which the Adam Walsh Center took an active role. We remembered what we had learned during the search for Adam, that rewards are useful in getting the media's attention and keeping it. So the center posted a reward. That way, if we had to go back to the press and ask for more coverage down the line, they wouldn't say, "Who needs you? We've already got Stacy's mother puking and crying on camera." What? That's fucking lovely. It's old news. Instead, they could report fresh news that the reward had just been increased. That's harsh. Wow. In most cases, no one actually collects the money. We didn't even have it. It was just a tactic to keep the case in front of the public. Except that 2 weeks later, on Valentine's Day, some guy having his lunch in a field a couple of miles from Stacy's house discovered her remains. She had been arred and murdered. I'm sorry. If anybody ever did anything like that to my son, I would be going to jail. Because I would kill the fucker. When we had to come up with a reward, and after we did, we asked the guy if he would donate it to Stacy's mother. We had been trying to help her out, paying her electric bill and things because she was lower income and having a really hard time. The guy's response was basically, "Fuck you. I found the bones. I'm keeping the money." A useful insight into the general public. As things go in the criminal justice system, Stacy's case came to trial in a heartbeat 3 months later in April of 1986. The prosecutor assigned to it someone who would become very important in my life, a tough, lethal Broward County DA by the name of Kelly Hancock, then the chief homicide prosecutor in the state attorney's office. Kelly had a plan. "John, life without parole is a sentence that juries can give relatively easily, but a death penalty is different. It's a much more difficult verdict for a jury to reach, and in order to get it, I have to prove heinous circumstances." What could effing be more heinous than R and murder of 11-year-old girl? Like, are you fucking kidding me? Still, it's a verdict that will send a message. I can get the death penalty conviction in this case, but only if you're in the courtroom looking those jurors in the eye. At that point, a lot of people in South Florida knew who I was. They remembered me as the father of that beautiful little murdered boy. And if that gave me influence, I thought, then so be it. During the trial, I sat in the courtroom, and it was torture. Nancy McBride attended every day and held the hand of Stacy's mother. At one point, the defense attorney stood up and said, "Your Honor, I want it entered into the court that if there is a conviction in this case, I'm going to base my appeal on the fact that John Walsh was in the courtroom influencing the jury." One of your basic fuck the victim moves. Holy shit. Wow. But the judge, God bless him, Judge John G. Ferris, I love that judge. He had a lot of guts, said, "Let me tell you something. Friends of the defendants are here in this courtroom, and Mr. Walsh has every right to be in this courtroom as well. I want that in the record." The guy charged with killing Stacy was a pedo. Young, good-looking, a real scumbag. One day, the judge took all the office secretaries on a tour to show them the new Broward County jail, and when this guy saw them coming through, he started, oh my God, he started masturbating apparently in front of all of them. That's the kind of guy he was. At one point, he turned around the courtroom and looked me in the eye and gave me the finger. "Fuck you, Mr. Walsh, fuck you." Kelly did a great job, and at the close of the 6-day trial, we got a conviction for the guy who had tortured and murdered Stacy Jazvac. That, of course, wasn't the end of things. Then came the tough time, the sentencing phase. Kelly said, John, I've got to convince the jury that there is a heinous circumstances here in order to get the recommendation for the death penalty. Any suggestions? Well, I think myself, I think that what happened to this girl was uh, deserves a death penalty enough. I mean, okay, I said, let me see the crime scene photos. You don't want to see them, John. By the time they found her, she was only skeletal remains. Yes, I said, I want to see them. I looked at those photographs of Stacy remains, what was left of her, and what I saw in close up were her hands. Two little skeleton hands that each had sticks and twigs and grass in them, whatever she could grasp while she was struggling as this guy was and torturing her and killing her. I'm sorry, trigger warning, guys. Kelly, blow these pictures up, get them in front of that jury, and say, want to know about heinous circumstances? I'll show you heinous circumstances. Look at these little hands. Want to know what this prick did to her in the last hour of her life? This is what he did to her. Just look at her little bony skeleton hands. Kelly enlarged those photographs and put them before the jury when he gave his final argument. On the day it was announced the jury had reached its decision, I was supposed to be in Boston for some award ceremony with George Bush, but I turned it down because it wasn't as important as being in the courtroom that day with Stacy Jasvak's mother. We took our seats and waited. Then the jurors filed into the courtroom. In death penalty cases, it's not hard to understand that there are often split decisions. But in the Stacy Jasvak case, the jurors voted unanimously 12-0 to recommend that the judge impose death sentence. Good. We bowed our heads and thanked God. After losing their little girl in so horrible a way, Stacy Jasvak's parents now at least had closure. May have been small consolation, but they had the satisfaction of knowing who was responsible for hurting their daughter and that this killer would never again be able to hurt another child. Which was more than what Reve and I had. 5 years after Adam's murder, there was still no arrest in his case. Sometimes police thought they had a good lead. Invariably, the tips would lead nowhere. By 1986, there had been no real movement in the investigation for nearly 3 years, ever since police up in Jacksonville had run across a drifter by the name of Otis Elwood Toole. On October 23, 1983, there was a sudden flurry of publicity when papers around the country announced that police had finally found the man who had killed Adam Walsh. The stories all said pretty much the same thing, that Toole, arrested as a suspect in a fatal arson case in Jacksonville, had told the police he was responsible for between 35 and 50 homicides around the country and that one of them was Adam's. Up in Jacksonville, Otis Toole had given a confession admitting that he had picked Adam up outside the Hollywood Mall, lured him into the car with toys and candy, and then he killed him. But the cops weren't telling me much beyond that. Most of what I knew was from what I read in the papers. Toole had been traveling with Henry Lee Lucas, a known serial killer, who was in prison in Texas and who was claiming responsibility for more than 150 murders. At a press conference, Sam Martin, the Hollywood police chief, said that the details Toole was confessing make Charles Manson sound like Tom Sawyer, a Huckleberry fan. According to Hollywood's assistant police chief, Leroy Hessler, Toole's stories were grisly and heinous beyond belief, but for one crime out of all of them, he clearly showed remorse. He breaks into tears, Hessler said when he talked about Adam. At the end of the press conference, the Hollywood police announced that the following day, Otis O'Toole will be officially charged with Adam's abduction and murder. Then I made a statement of my own. My heart will be broken for the rest of my life, but I hope that Toole receives due justice and receives due process, and I hope that Adam receives some justice. Weeks went by, then months and years. We kept thinking that the cops were working on the case, that there might be some reason for the delay that we didn't know about. But during the whole time, for whatever reason, Otis O'Toole was never indicted. I never received a full explanation for why that was the case. I learned that O'Toole had apparently recanted his confession a couple times and that he kept changing his story. And that was when the Hollywood police went up to Jacksonville and brought Toole back down to the spot along the Florida Turnpike where he said he had buried the rest of Adam's remains. There was no evidence, no trace of Adam, no sign of anything at all. I believe that the cops were doing the best they could and that if they did find out anything, they would let me know about it as soon as they could. But after a while, the bottom line seemed to be that they believed Otis O'Toole had not really killed Adam, that he had just been lying to gain some notoriety, that he had just been bluffing, and I trusted them. Throughout all the legal battles, in the court fights, and the endless travel, Adam was never out of my mind. Never, not even for a day. He always was the one I was fighting for the one who kept me focused. And if the horror of what had happened to him ever began to fade, even for a minute, it always seemed that something would come along to reopen that wound. Sometimes it would be a newspaper story, or a phone call, or some new piece of information from the Hollywood police. And then one day at the airport, it was something that Les Davies said he had to show me, something that had arrived at the Adam Walsh Center addressed to me. It was a letter, handwritten, carrying a postage mark from Stark Prison near Jacksonville. Dear Walsh, I'm the person who snatched, and murdered, oh my God, and cut up the little prick teaser, Adam Walsh. Wow. And dumped his smelly ass into the canal? You know the story, but you don't know where his bones are. I do. Now you are a rich fucker. Money you made from the dead body of that little kid. Oh, he was a sweet. Oh, okay, I'm not reading that. Um, I want to make a deal with you. Here's my deal. You pay me money, and I'll tell you where the bones are, so you can get them buried all decent and Christian. I'll know you'll. I know you'll find a way to make sure I get the electric chair, but at least I'll have the money to spend before I burn. If you want the bones of, if you want your child's bones, you need to send a private lawyer with money for me. No cops, no state attorneys, just a private lawyer with a written contract. I get 5,000 as good faith money, and then I'll show you some bones I get, and I get 45,000. You get a lawyer to make up a paper like that. If you send the police after me before we make a deal, then you won't get no bones. Oh my God, what the fuck this guy wrote is disgusting. Basically, this letter, I'm not reading it all. I can't. Oh my God. So basically, he threatened him that he wants money, and if he goes to the police, he will never see his son's bones. I'm sorry, guys. This is really hard. I can't believe what I just fucking read. Okay, now we're on chapter 12. This one's called America's Most Wanted. 1984 was a rough time for us. It was the year that we moved to Washington when I didn't even have a real job, just a temporary national center consultancy that was going to pay me about $32,000 a year. I was struggling trying to get the center off the ground, flying all over the country, lobbying, doing speaking engagements, trying to keep all the balls in the air. At one point, I finally collapsed and was put in the hospital in Virginia. I thought it was a heart attack, but it turned out to be exhaustion. They put me on IVs and everything, and the doctors told me that I had to slow down and start taking it easy. As soon as I got out of the hospital, I went right back to the center and started up again. After After the two made-for-TV movies about Adam in 1983 and 1986, Linda Otto and Alan Landsberg had remained my guardian angels, supporting me emotionally with career advice. They didn't just make the movie and then move on. They stayed in touch, always wanted to know how we were doing, if we needed any help, and always telling me, just being nice. I thought that I would be really great on television. Yeah, Dad, exactly. I, if you want to know what the letter says, I can screenshot it and send it to you, but I'm not reading it on here. There's a lot of things I'm not reading on here because I can't. It's I've never heard anything like it, and it's really disgusting. It makes me angry. It makes me want to cry, and my heart can't take it. Nobody's heart will be able to take it. So I'm not going to read it. I didn't even read the rest of it. I can't. I thought that I would be really great on television. You know, you're killing yourself, they said. You're going out of the center to think of you can't keep staging bake sales, talking at 200 people at a time. Television is the most powerful medium. Think of how you could use it to get your message across. Then, right out of the woodwork, up popped the opportunity to do a PBS special. The call had come from an independent producer from Westinghouse. Yeah, I agree, Deb. More trauma. Are you all right? I want to do a documentary about parents of murdered children, he said, about what it's like if your child is kidnapped and murdered. What does that do to a family? How do you get through it? It's obvious what you found a way to channel your grief, which was total bullshit because anybody could see how angry and abrasive I was. But this producer had a lot of faith in me. What he wanted was to film me sitting down and talking to these parents. What happened to your child? How are you going to deal with it? Straight documentary style. I talked to Linda Otto about it. I don't know about stand-ups or anything. She said, John, you can do it. It's documentary. Just go ahead and do it. A Parent's Greatest Fear aired in May 1984, and I think we pulled it off. People watched the show, and it was well received. I know that, for me, it was a heart-rending experience, but it reminded me that other people out there are hurting as much as we were. It reminded me that Adam wasn't the only child who had been kidnapped and murdered. A couple of years later, I got a call from a producer at HBO named Sheila Nevins. She was interested, she said, in putting together a documentary based on the book How to Raise a Street Smart Child, written by Grace Hetchinger. Sheila Nevins, who had known Dan Travanti for years, the actor who had played me in the 2 Adam TV movies, got him to host it. I suggested that she also line up Linda Otto, who signed on for nothing. Dan agreed to do it for expenses, a plane ticket to fly in and do the stand-ups. The program, Street Smart, told parents how to educate their children about physical and sexual abuse. We reported that 70% or more of the crimes against children were committed by someone they knew, trusted authority figures, which reflected that what we had learned over the years. That unlike what we initially thought, kidnappings by strangers, while traumatic and horrible, were actually the rarest type of child abduction. That kids all over the country were being abused physically and sexually at home and by friends of the family, and that for the most part, the problem wasn't being discussed. During the show, we talked about the criticism that we might be accused of unnecessarily scaring children. I'd rather scare my kid than identify him in a morgue, I said. At first, none of the suits at HBO seemed overly enthused about promoting the show. Who's John Walsh? Who's Dan Travanti? It's just a documentary, who cares? But Sheila Nevins kept fighting for that show. She got it produced, and after it first aired in 1987, it won a bunch of awards. Although I certainly wasn't paying any attention to it at the time, 2 years earlier, the Australian media mogul Rupert Murdoch had bought Metro Media and 20th Century Fox as a foray into U.S. films and broadcasting. His idea was to try to turn a group of Fox affiliate stations into the nation's 4th television network, and we were willing to pour $110 million into the project over a 2-year period to make it happen. Murdoch's people were trying to come up with a single night of programming for Fox's 7 O&Os, the local TV stations around the country that it owned and operated. Besides those, there were about 80 Fox affiliated stations around the country compared to NBC and CBS, who each had more than 200. The Wall Street Journal and the New York Times were saying there would never be a 4th network. Murdoch was fighting an uphill battle, something that had only someone with his ego and deep pockets could ever dream of. Fox programmers knew that there were crime-fighting shows in Europe, such as the BBC's Crime Watch UK, that used viewer participation as a way to catch fugitives. And they wanted to start a show like that in the United States. The crime-fighting concept was already in development, and a guy named Tom Hurwitz, who was a vice president of corporate and legal affairs for Fox television stations in Washington. Hey, Crystal. Washington, D.C. had already done a lot of homework. He had asked for a meeting with the FBI and wound up talking to none other than my old buddy Buck Rebel, who was still there. Hurwitz showed him a 2-page treatment of the show, and Rebel was impressed enough to see to it that the borough eventually gave its conditional blessing to the project. That left Hurwitz with only one big problem remaining: finding a host for the show. Stephen Chow, Fox Vice President of Program Development, and an LA producer named Michael Linder sat down with Hurwitz to discuss the possibilities. They considered the author, Joseph Wambaugh, and a whole raft of actors: Treat Williams, Ed Marino, Brian Denny, Brian Keith, and Teresa Salanda, who had played herself in a TV movie about how she was nearly stabbed to death by some psychotic attacker. Then, during one of their marathon conference calls, Hurwitz suggested me. Everybody seemed to like the idea. What I had, they thought, was credibility. I'd experienced a great personal tragedy, but somehow managed to survive it and carry on with some pretty good legislative work. Hurwitz, who was a lobbyist and knew me from the Hill, wanted to talk to me, but at first he had a hard time tracking me down. I was all over the place in those days, traveling something like 500,000 air miles a year. But finally, through Nancy McBride, my assistant at the Autumn Walsh Center in West Palm Beach, he did get in touch with me. Nancy already filled me in about the idea for the show. Hurwitz wanted to know if I might be interested in doing a pilot. What's a pilot? I said. In the 7 years since Adam's death, I had been asked to do all kinds of things: host TV shows, endorse home burglar systems, you name it, and I had turned them all down. So when this call came in, my immediate reaction was, no way, I'm not a celebrity, I'm the father of a murdered child. And then I talked for a while about Adam. Hurwitz later said that had only convinced him more. Besides me having the voice and the looks for TV, he thought, I was also kind of card-carrying everyman, an ordinary person who had been hit hard by crime, who could reach audiences in a way that a standard TV actor couldn't. Hey, D. I haven't been on your feed lately. No, I don't know what's going on except for I know last night, and it's been happening a lot lately, but for sure last night, a lot of people have lost their channels today, and they've lost subscribers. I've lost hundreds. I don't know if you guys aren't subscribed and you still want to be. Can you please resubscribe? I don't know what's going on with YouTube, but I know a lot of my subscribers have lost the ability to even sign into YouTube. YouTube had told them, we've taken your channel, even though it's not a channel, because you broke TOS, and they can't even sign into it or anything. They can't. So a lot of them had to have appealed it. So all my subscribers have lost their channels, even though there's no content. It doesn't make sense. So I've lost a lot. I don't know what's going on with YouTube, but they need to fix it because this isn't fair to the subs or the creators. Yeah, they're losing their, because, like every one of us have a YouTube, I guess you'd say, channel, right? But there's subs and then there's content creators. These subscribers that aren't creators and who don't have content are losing their channel, and YouTube is telling them because their content breaks TOS, and like that's it, that's all. And if you want to appeal it, you can. I wonder if it's a hack. Yeah, a lot of us creators have lost a lot of subs. It's crazy. I can't believe I'm like every single person, every creator I've talked to, they're like, yeah, we've lost hundreds, we've lost like 50, we've lost 10, we've lost 20. And then with the subscribers, I've been getting messages all day saying, I'm sorry, I didn't unsub from you. I apparently lost my YouTube channel because I'm putting out content that's horrible. I was like, wow, it's crazy. It is very stupid, and it really sucks. I was so close to 3,000. Now I'm back to 2,000, like the beginning. Not even kidding. I'm just going to finish up these couple pages and then I'll stop reading. I'm starting to get a sore throat. All right, what's a pilot? I said. In the 7 years since Adam's death, I'd been asked to do all kinds of things: host TV shows, endorse some burglars. Oh, I already read that, didn't I? This is lovely. Besides me having the voice and looks for TV, of course he'd say that. It is terrible. It sucks. I have to go, so I just have to keep reminding people, I guess, every day. So I'm going to be annoying if you are a subscriber. Can you just check and see if you're still subbed? If you want to be, that would be lovely. Thank you. Because this sucks. It's not anybody's fault except for YouTube. And it's sad because a lot of these subscribers are just like, I can't even get into my shit. So they're like, I don't even know who I'm subscribed to. Because you know how a lot of us, even creators, we subscribe to a lot of people. I can't remember all of them. If I lose my channel, I use my source of income. I mean, it's not much, but hey, it's something. I was also a kind of card-carrying everyman, ordinary person who had been hit hard by a crime. At the time, Fox was still a startup operation. The only hit it had was a show called 21 Jump Street, starring a young unknown by the name of Johnny Depp. I didn't know that. Yeah, he thought he was the TV What the? So I'm like, seriously? Oh my god. I didn't know that. So Johnny Depp was in a show called 21 Jump Street. Huh. I knew that Johnny Depp's first role was the Nightmare on Elm Street with Robert Englund, the very first, in 1984. I knew that. In a grab for ratings, Fox might well try to make this new crime show something really exploitative. I told Hurwitz and Linder that the show's content would be critical, as would be the way it treated victims. They told me that it could do some good. At the time, something like 280,000 fugitives were on the loose in the United States, wanted by the FBI, the U.S. Marshal Service, the DEA, Customs, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Interpol, and thousands of local agencies. I told them that I wasn't going to move my family to California. No problem, they said. The show was going to be produced out of Washington. We went back and forth like that for nearly 5 hours. Afterward, Hurwitz kept up the pressure. Persistent. Flattering. We've screen tested all kinds of people, but it keeps coming back to you, he said. You're the guy we want. Hey, Benny. I had to make a new YouTube. I'm not using my full name. I wonder if the YouTuber who shall not be named lost any. Oh, shit. You lost your... That's the thing. No. She's still... Actually, I'm going to double check. I'm going to check that right now. Because if so, fine. If not, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, wow, something's up with that. All right, let's see. No, she's got 276. Are you fucking kidding me? Well, that's a little strange, isn't it? Wow. I figured it was you, but I didn't want to say. Yeah, because someone told me that you had lost it as well. Oh my God. Yeah, she's at 276,000 subs. So how is that possible when we all lost our subscribers and subscribers lost their channel to even associate with any of us? How's that fair? You know, I was talking to a subscriber that this happened to before today, okay? And we've been talking back and forth through Messenger, right? I still have mine and they offered me a free new handle. Today? What the fuck is going on? That's weird. But I've been talking to this girl and she was telling me that. And she's like, you know, they were saying that that they lost their channel, but yet they don't have content. And this happened before today. That heifer is in some kind of cult herself. She always gets by without getting shit on. I agree. 100%, D. 100%. Yeah, I'm going to stop reading for tonight and just talk to you guys for a few. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. A lot of people are upset. Like I said, I've been getting, emails and messages all day long and people are apologizing to me. And it's like, don't. It's not you guys. It's YouTube. It was 2 weeks ago. Okay. That is weird because that is very weird. Yes, us creators got that option, SD. Yes, we did. Yeah, it says that your channel went against community guidelines. Yep. Did you appeal it? Just appeal it, you guys. If that happens to you, appeal it. It's a pain in the ass and everything. You are fighting it? Okay. It's bullshit. You shouldn't even have to. So many people are going through this right now. It's ridiculous. And yet, here we are looking at KJ. I shouldn't have mentioned it, but I did. But yeah, that's the one who shall not be named. Hey, Mama 3. And yet, she's still at 276,000 subs. And we all lost our subs. That doesn't make sense. And that's the thing with all you subscribers. If you don't get, she lost, LB lost subs as well. Yeah. Jesse the Russo did. I think AKC did. We all did. It's crazy. I don't know what the fuck they did last night, but I'm not impressed. Deb lost 2? But her channel is not huge. So it's like, you notice. Oh, I noticed because yeah, I went down a lot. I don't even know. What the hell am I at now? Probably. I don't even know. You know what's weird though is that my views are going up and my watch time hours are going up, and yet I lost all these subs. It was like, holy shit. Yeah, I'm at 2,214. I have never been that low. I don't know. This is crazy. Jesus, I just lost 2 more subs. It was at 217. Now it's 214 again. What is going on here? Wow. I don't know. They better fix this shit. It's not right. And CB did too, eh? Yep. Yeah, you were a member of our channel. It's happening to a oh my god. I know her from the special needs community. My son has the same display. So it's just she set fire in all groups. She's so wild and grateful for how able her son. I agree, D. 100%. Oh, you were in that community. Was it at that Facebook group, D? Oh no, if you're in that group, I've heard so many bad things about that group for what she did to you guys. And I'm sorry that happened to you. Wow. And she is very ungrateful. That's why I'm constantly doing videos on her every day just to show her lies and bullshit. She's got to be stopped. She's dangerous. Yeah, I agree 100% D. Yes, she does. There's no way you're getting 1,000 subs a day. And if you do buy subs, it's $100 for 1,000 subs, I found out. Yeah. And it's funny how she goes up 1,000 every day, isn't it? Yeah. I'll never be anything. Yeah, you will. Why are you so sad today? You're making me like want to smack you or something. Lovingly, of course. No, her views don't match, and that's what I mean. My views have always matched. Always. Except now I don't. Now it's a little fucky. A few groups, eh? Oh my gosh. I'm not really sure how you buy. I know you can. Yeah. Oh, don't go. You're just in such a like sad and weird mood today. I don't know why you never told me, and you don't have to tell me on here at all. Just I feel bad. I wish I'd give you a hug. Parents and caregivers. Did she do anything personally to you, D? She makes me sick. She really does. I don't even know, where do you go to buy subs? I'll have to Google it. You lost one sub, Crystal? Maybe they chose to have sub. Yeah, maybe. Luckily, it's only one. I lost too many to count. I mean, yeah, she's in a blah mood today. I seen her. Wait, we were in Jesse's live, and that was good. And then, um, I was in AKC's live. I left though. Were you not good in that one either? Damn. YouTube's got to. I don't know how they would fix it. Oh, and then I think it was Crystal Bell. She ended up getting a whole shit ton of subs from what I heard. So good for her. I just hope they stick because I don't. You know what I mean? A lot of us lost, and she was one of the lucky, fortunate ones that actually got. Actually, I want to check her out. See how much she got because she was just below 2,000. I hope they stay, and I hope she gets more than 2,000. Let me see. Oh no, she's still the same. I thought she got a whole bunch more. She's at 193. Damn. I thought she'd get more. She should. She's hilarious. I love her. It was the one set up by the Schofields and made a crazy lady puzzle of shit. Oh my god. A lot of us have followed the same creators, so I can. If you're trying to, when you guys do get, I guess your access back from YouTube, I'll because I haven't lost my channel or anything, so I'm still sub to a lot of stuff that you guys probably are, and I can just give you a list of who I'm sub to, and I'm sure you guys will be like, oh yeah, that one. You're very teary right now. I'm sorry. You're right, T. She does. She thinks she's the smartest person in every conversation. If you even correct that woman, she starts a full-on argument and throws a pity. Damn right she does. And her child always has to be the sickest. Doesn't matter. If your child and her child both got the flu, doesn't matter. Hers got the flu and lasted one more day. Or his temperature was just a little bit higher. Or her son threw up a little bit more. It's always a competition with her, and she is a full-blown liar. I cannot stand that woman. I can't. She's dangerous, and I want her gone. I'm so happy that she doesn't go live on Facebook and IG anymore. And you want to know why? It's because she's not monetized anymore. So why would she? She's not going to get paid for it. Why would she go live on that, right? She can, however. Oh, she lost her monetization on her other channel too, Katie Joy Live. So I thought that was just great. So the only platform she has that she makes money on is this YouTube channel, and she needs it gone, in my honest to God opinion. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't want to argue and fight with who has it worse. You know what I'm saying? I would be in there to comfort and ask questions if I had issues with my son. I definitely would. Um, I've never understood how she is the way she is. I don't get it. Because to me, from what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've read, what I've watched, she's had a privileged life. And everything that comes out of her mouth, I have debunked. It's all lies. Like that so called cult of a church that she went to, that was a goddamn lie. Yeah, that was a huge lie. They're very hurt by her for what she did. So many things that come out of that woman's mouth is a lie. It's horrible. I've never seen anyone like that in my life. Very narcissistic, constantly lies. I mean, that's why a lot of us, yeah, she is insecure as AF, absolutely. And that's exactly why a lot of us cover hers, because we want her gone. We want people to know what she's like. She doxes people, stalks, look what she did to Miranda Derrick because she was beautiful and she was jealous. She does call every church a cult. And you know what? I may not be religious, but I don't agree with that whatsoever. I think that churches are a place to worship, meet friends, hang out, believe in something. And I think that's great for everyone. Not every church is a cult. I don't even think they're cults. I think it's just a way to live your life. It's a means of life, I guess you could say. No, she's got to go. I don't even know how many more videos I have to make. I'm still behind. I did another Sister Wives today for tomorrow. Let me see. Just funny that her subs still stayed at 276,000. I know, me too, Deb. Oh my God. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm behind by 4. Holy crap. Another another Sister Wives one. 1, 2. Two more Sister Wives ones that are about the same clip that just come out. And then there's 2 Duggar ones. And this is about Ginger and her book. Wow. So the Sister Wives and the Duggar one was done today. 3 days ago was a Ginger Duggar, and then that same. So she did. Oh my God, a Duggar and a Sister Wives 3 days ago, and a Duggar and a Sister Wives today. That's crazy. Deb. Yesterday I was in a really, 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 really bad mood. I went grocery shopping and I wasn't happy at all. I just wasn't. I couldn't believe it. $75 for cat litter. So thank you to whoever commented on my video yesterday, because you gave me some great ideas. I'm going to the park. I'm stealing some sand, and the cats are going to take a dump in fucking sand. I don't care. I'm going to go get it. It's free. I'll just keep stealing a whole bunch of it. Hopefully lasts me over winter. And then I was told newspaper, just whatever. They'll use anything. And they were right, because they would, right? So we'll do that. What else was I going to say? Growing my own vegetables. I'm going to start doing that. Fruit and veg. I'm doing it. I'm serious. I will never pay $75 for cat litter. Are they insane? Oh, a bag of milk is almost $10. A carton of eggs, 12 eggs. It was $8.99. That's $9. Are they on drugs? It's insane. Yeah, I agree, Dee. Hey, Teresa. Yeah, she is back to low key accusing them of crimes. Absolutely. And that's why I keep trying to prove to everyone she is lying. Maybe you're not subbed anymore, Teresa, because a lot of people today um got unsubbed to my channel. I'm talking lots, like a lot. They're gonna triple their yeah, yeah, $8.99 for eggs. Can you imagine?
Can you? There's a thing that went on your phone. I tried to add my other friend. It should pop up if you can.
I don't see it.
Um, or try it.
Can I do it after?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm scared. All the bills are gonna go up. I don't know. Me too, D. I really do. Oh, you did check? Okay. Hit the bell again. Yeah, because normally you do get notified, right? Yeah, just hit the bell again. And I want sister wives to do it as well. She accused them of so much the other day when I did that video. Oh my god, of abuse, sex trafficking. It was just wow. The nerve. But that's the thing though. She thinks she's invincible and she thinks she's above the law. Well, I would too if I kept getting away with everything. You're subscribing, the bell is on. Figures. 3 something for eggs there. See, I can get from Amazon. I can get dry goods from Amazon, and a lot of it is cheaper. But for milk and eggs and stuff like that, and bread and butter, it's all skyrocketed, and I can't get that from Amazon. Like, luckily, at the grocery store, they had a couple vegetables, and that was it. That was on sale. I couldn't buy fruit. No way. I am not paying $10 for a little tiny thing of raspberries or strawberries or no, no. Oh wait, I did get fruit. Sorry, I got 4 bananas. And it cost me $2. Oh, are you too, Crystal? I'm so sorry. It is worrying, isn't it? You're not worthless. Listen, we're all going through it apparently. It's not just me, as you're saying right now. Nobody can afford anything right now. Something has to be done. It's just I don't know how to fix it. Yeah, and KJ just sits there and money rolls in and she still complains about dumb things. I know, right? She didn't lose any subscribers. Of course not. You're still trying to remember all the channels you subscribe to. Yeah, I agree, Dee. She does. It's disgusting. I'm gonna have to go. My son needs me. And oh wait, does anybody know if there's school tomorrow? Somebody told me there wasn't for Ontario because they're still on strike, but then I heard that they came to a conclusion today. You know what? I'll ask the neighbor, see what she says. But I should get off here. Um, yeah, I should get off here. What is tomorrow? Tuesday? I think I have a video tomorrow. Yes, I do. No, I have a live. I'm gonna um, I'm gonna read more of Haunted London because I never did finish that book, and it was really interesting to me. And I don't want to stop reading about paranormal. I was just gonna do it for how like the whole month of October, Halloween, but nah, I love doing stuff like that. So I'm gonna read the rest of Haunted London. There's still a few there, so still a few more stories in there. There's quite a few of them actually. And then I'm doing something with a friend of mine, and we'll be doing commentary on well, not really yeah, I guess commentary. We did some research and stuff on, well, serial killers in Canada. Moved to the States. Yeah, but then the problem there is the healthcare system. Like, I can't even afford, if I wanted my license, I can't afford it. It's almost $200. If I wanted a car, I can't afford the gas, the payments on it, the insurance. I can't afford that. Yeah, right. I can't get a car. I can barely buy my food. What the you know what I mean? Nope. All right, I should go. I will be back tomorrow though at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and I'll be reading more Haunted London and the ghosties there. All right, you guys have a good night. I appreciate you coming. All right, you guys have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow night. Bye.